to this area of unusual experiences and see what's the hardcore of what's real and what is indeed superstition and nonsense left over from previous times.
How do you react to the increasing prominence of the skeptical community?
I wish there was a genuinely skeptical community. I'm afraid just about everyone I've ever met are what I call pseudo-skeptics. See, a real skeptic says, I don't know about this area and the explanations we have so far don't satisfy. I want to look at the data. But just about everyone I've met who calls themselves a skeptic actually already knows there's nothing to it and breaks all sorts of rules of scientific procedure and then debunking. It's not legitimate science or legitimate skepticism.
Isn't there a legitimate help that the skeptics do by eliminating all the silly stuff that goes on that just kind of crowds the area with absurdities?
That might have been true 100 years ago, but the methodology in parapsychology has gotten so good, and parapsychologists are so thorough in their own criticism of each other's experiments, that pretty well handles the problem.
But
I mean, there are popular frauds out there.
If the experiments are so good and the data is so robust, why do we have two people on opposite sides here who are both scientists and both very interested in these questions, completely skeptical? What is it about the field that gives it such weak acceptance? Marilyn?
There's a couple of things that I'd like to say. One, I'm just reminded of the joke that there are stages in the acceptance of unorthodox ideas. First, the critics will say there's nothing to that data, and then you acquire more data, and then the second stage is, well, there might be something to it, but it's such a small effect that it's meaningless. And you acquire more data, and you try to show its relevance, and then the skeptical community says, well, of course, we knew it all along. So where have you been? So I mean, there are stages in the acceptance of
Jim's next book
unorthodox
is going to be on
ideas.
parapsychology.
Well, if we can get to him and get him some education about some of the data, I think that could well happen.
Okay, we're going to arrange for Marilyn to get you guys her data, and then a future show we're going to get you back together. That's a promise.
But I do want to speak to the question of the contribution of open-minded skeptics, because I feel that there is a great contribution to be made there. I think there is a lot of nonsense that happens in terms of the kinds of beliefs that dominate our culture and the ways in which people can be taken down blind alleys. And so genuine skepticism, and I think Dean spoke well to the idea, and Charlie too, that there's a lot of skepticism inherent in the field of parapsychology. The parapsychologists who are collecting these data don't want to be fooled themselves. But, you know, I've seen examples within the skeptical community themselves where they are really helping us to refine our protocols and to sort of sharpen our critical skills. And nobody wants to be deceived. I believe that's true. So I think that there's a lot of room for healthy debate within the community such that we can begin to move the field forward.
If there's a genuine search for truth, that's a great combination.
But I'd like to say that, you know, I have been involved in other areas of science where there has been a lot of skepticism. For example, the theory that the dinosaurs were wiped out by an impact. I was involved in that, and I saw how the scientific community over a period of time changed its mind, driven by data. Now, I just don't see that happening here, and it hasn't happened for 100 years.
Example. You know, and I think, you know, Charles is making a stereotype of what skeptics are, and it doesn't jibe with the kind of skeptics that I know. But I mean, it's not just that these things are weird. I mean, we all accept quantum mechanics, which is totally counterintuitive because it produces the goods. It's replicable. It is a better explanation. It makes predictions that turn out to be verified in experiments. And you know, lots of skeptical physicists, Albert Einstein himself, I guess Einstein went to his grave still figuring there was something wrong there. But the field, it's not controversial anymore because it's delivered the goods. And this is what, and I think parapsychology has yet to do. And if it turns out that it does at some point come up with something that tips the scales, then I don't know very many skeptics who would be any more skeptical about it than we are about quantum mechanics.
We're going to take a prediction 100 years from now. Will parapsychology be recognized as a mainstream science, Dean?
I think the answer is yes, but it won't be called parapsychology anymore. It'll be absorbed into mainstream science.
Marilyn?
I would agree with Dean, and I think it's going to be applied in things like healthcare.
I would actually agree too, but I don't have much hope that that'll actually happen. I mean, if the data are there, then it's no longer para anything. It's part of physics, it's part of psychology, it's part of physiology, and so if those data come in a way that skeptics can accept, well then parapsychology can fold its tent and become part of mainstream science.
But do you think it'll happen?
No, I'm not expecting that to happen.
Jim?
Yeah, I think I agree with Barry that I think we're going to go along pretty much the next century the way we have the last century. There will be people who keep trying to establish the field, and it won't happen.
Julie?
I'm between the optimist and the pessimist. I think we'll have reasonable practical applications where psychic abilities can help, but even more importantly, we'll be looking at the implications of psychic phenomena for what they say about our transpersonal or spiritual nature, and that's what's going to be really important.
So how do we explain the unexplainable? What do we do with these strange stories that throughout history have mystified us? From our discussions, it would seem that there are three possibilities. One, ESP does not exist, and all the reports can be dismissed as illusion, delusion, misguided hope, mistaken belief, laboratory error, or simply fraud. Two, ESP does exist, and science will ultimately explain how it works. Three, ESP does exist, but science in its present form cannot get at it. We'll have to wait until one of these possibilities moves us closer to truth. I'm Robert Kuhn.